I honor and value new friendships. I think a best, one of the, if you study Sufism, one of the 99 divine attributes, one of the 99 attributes of the divine that one can step into in their own life. And any one of these 99, if lived fully, will be an enlightenment.
Hello, everybody. I would like you to meet my new guest, Jason Pickard, and I'm very happy to have him on the Project Vitality podcast. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to get him on. I've heard about Jason millions of times through studying with the Czech Institute. And the reason being, he is Paul's longest running client and has worked with him in so many different areas and grown as an incredible human being. And because I heard so much about him and his journey, I was very, very interested. I've listened to a few podcasts with him. I follow him on social media. And his message is something that's super important for the world right now and for so many people in my audience and also myself. So thank you very much for coming on. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So for those of you that haven't heard about you a million times, would you be able to tell us your story? So what led you to where you are today? Have you always been like you are today, or did something major have to shift in your life to get you to where you are?
Yeah. I don't think who I am today was who I was yesterday, to be honest. So it's a constantly evolving process, isn't it?
It is.
So yeah, I mean, the best way to describe my story is, I grew up in the United States, in the New York, New Jersey area. And I had a pretty mainstream upbringing. I had great parents, public school education kind of thing. And, I did well in school. I did well in athletics, but despite having like a very supportive background and very supportive parents, I kind of always felt inside of myself that something was missing in me. It really had nothing to do with my mom and dad. They were very like accomplished and very, by all means, wonderful parents. But like for some reason, I grew up with like feeling like something was a little off, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It was almost as if I was watching my life from behind myself or something, and not really fully embodied and not totally fully confident in who I was or who I am. And so, I went on to go to college. I went to the University of Virginia, which is a very, very good school here. And, I did really well at partying and having friends and doing kind of extreme things. And, that led me to go to Wall Street, which was kind of a childhood dream of mine. My father was a very successful Wall Street financial person. And, I went into a slightly different path. I went into trading, which we could talk about if that's of interest. But, I went into financial trading when I was, 21, 22 years old. And I had a really good knack for it. It just came natural to me. And I really loved it. It was like, this was so exciting and, lots of freedom and lots of opportunities to make money and express myself in my work. And, around 5 or 6 years in, I found myself in, by all means, a very profitable, successful position. I was running my own book, which is kind of trade slang for having your own portfolio and having your own team. I was a partner of my firm, which was kind of unprecedented for my age at the time. And I was very well recognized within my niche of my trading world. But at the same time, I was 330 pounds. I don't know what that is in kg for the Australian audience, but let's say 160 or so, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was really, really unhealthy. I was really sick and quite depressed, despite the outer appearance of this larger than life personality and somebody driving around in limousines and drinking champagne and going to fancy restaurants and stuff. and having a big bank account, I didn't really feel that on the inside.
Right.
And I got faced with some major health crises where I was in the hospital, and I really had to ask myself, what was I really doing? What was this for? What was the point of this if I wasn't going to be around to enjoy it? If I wasn't going to feel healthy enough or confident enough to even have a love relationship? And so that started me on a 2-year journey of exercising. And I started exercising like crazy. And I did that for 2 years, kind of like morning, noon, and night, CrossFit style. No pain, no gain, just sweating it out and working really hard. And at the end of the 2 years, I found myself kind of ironically in a similar situation. I now had this lean body, but something still was missing. And that's kind of when I realized it was an inside job and an inside journey. And that was kind of in my late 20s, about 15, 16 years ago, when I decided to go on what we would call a spiritual path of discovering what was my purpose in life? Who am I really? What's going on the inside of myself and not on the outside? And I've been on the journey ever since.
Awesome. And that's why I really wanted to get you on here, because you can, focus on money, or you could focus on health, and you can, be the extreme of it. So you went from extreme money, then you focus really on extreme health. But at the same time, we can be moving and progressing forward without actually inquiring inside to what I truly desire. And there's a lot of programs and memes around it, especially in the fitness industry, like, go hard and just smash your body and, then you'll be happy. And you do see so many people that are there. They look healthy on the outside, but they're miserable on the inside. Or as you said, you looked, you had the big bank account and you were kind of the big life of the party. But deep down, you were deeply depressed. And so going from that world and then going down that more spiritual path, how did that kind of transition? So did you kind of just leave that financial world and just go off and live amongst the monks or the people in India and meditate, or how did that work for you?
No, it was sort of the opposite of that. In fact, for probably about 12 more years, I did those things side by side. Perfect. My initial goal was really, how do I do my job better by being fitter, by getting to sleep on time, by learning how to exercise properly, by learning how to meditate, by learning how to stand at my desk and, have proper ergonomics, by learning how to be creative, by bringing my own food and water and coffee to work so that I was fueled. I began to look at myself as an athlete, even though I was in kind of a non-athletic field. I decided to think of myself of how would I train for work? How would I treat myself if I was like an Olympian or a professional athlete? Because I was a professional and I was in a very highly stressful and highly demanding job. And I realized that the more I can include these other things into my life, the more longevity I would have, the more focus I would have, the more creativity I could have, the more vitality I would have in my work. And the more that I understood my inner process, the more I could bring that out to relate to team members, clients, or even my own intuition. So for a very long time, I did this side by side. And in around 2019, I realized that my desire for the other, the non-trading world, the spiritual world, or the coaching world, or the therapy world, shamanic world, had grown to a much larger degree. And I could no longer do my job in the finance world well because my interest wasn't there. The love of it started to wane after doing it for 17, 18 years. And so at that time in 2019, I decided to retire from the financial world. And I moved into kind of a space of unknown. I didn't know what I was going to do. I continued my, kind of aggressive studying of many different fields with many different teachers and many different certifications and many different degrees of sort, from shamanism to music to biogeometry, to Hawaiian culture to yoga and Hindu philosophy, to studying process-oriented psychology with Dr. Arnold Mindell, which I'm still a practitioner of, and many, many, many other things, as you can imagine. And the funny thing that I realized was my earliest loves in life were drumming and magic. And I loved those things before I kind of had any sort of education about, okay, you should pick up an instrument or you should have a hobby or anything like that. These were just natural things that I enjoyed. And when I left the Wall Street world, I felt sort of an emptiness. I don't think people really prepare you for what it's like to leave a role of societal importance and move into like a dark void of emptiness where you're just kind of sitting at home each day after, imagining yourself as an important person for 20 years on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I thought about like, what did I just do? What did I just give up? Who am I now, really? And it took me through a long, deep inner process. But what I realized is that when I was a kid and I loved drumming and magic, I realized that underneath the role of the drummer, let's say, was somebody who loved rhythm, who loved the beat. And underneath the magician was somebody who loved magic and awe and spontaneity and a childlike mind, one could say. And so I realized that when I was in the trading world, that what made me a good trader was that I could feel the beat and the rhythm of the market. And I had my finger on the pulse, so to speak, the heartbeat. And at the same time, I got that same sense of magic when I would come up with ideas and I would create profits and strategies. It gave me that same sense of wonder and magic and awe. And I realized that I had to have a childlike mind in order to be creative, in order to see things that people weren't normally seeing and to take risks. And so that led me to realize that as I emerged into a coach and ultimately into the course and community that I now manage called the Abundance Archetype, which we can talk about, that what made me a good coach, what made me a good therapist was that I could teach people how to have rhythm in their own life and to feel their own heartbeat and to feel the pulse of the universe that's moving through them and to wake up each day with a sense of reverence and joy and awe for the magic of life and to find that magic in their own life. And so I realized that all along, the things that have changed from the drummer and the magician to the student, to the trader, to the coach, to the teacher, the skills and the dreaming process underneath them all were energetically the same. And the only thing that changed was sort of the name on the business card or the name on the resume. But underneath, there was the same process. And I realized that as long as I'm on that dream line for myself, as long as I'm attached to those essences of which I came in with, no matter what I do, I can be successful. And so that helped me kind of transition from moving out of the trading world, realizing that I didn't really leave anything behind, that the thing that was always with me, I'm carrying through to the next endeavor. And so when I was in the trading world, towards the end of it, my interest started to be so much in the spiritual realm. I started wanting to meditate more than being at the desk. I started wanting to go on retreats more than I wanted to be at work. And it was almost like I was dreaming at night of these other kind of realms. And when I left Wall Street, I went full on into this other field and I completely forgot about this trader personality. But then I was left with this ideas that like I would go to bed at night and all I would dream about were the markets. And I was like, why can't I get rid of this? I don't even want to think about that anymore. Why is this constantly coming up? And that led me to this realization that we have to include all parts of ourselves, that the trader part of me is just as valuable as the drummer and is just as valuable as the coach. And in fact, if I want to be at my best self and really kind of maximize my competitive advantage in the world and become a master of my own life, entrepreneurially and also spiritually, I needed to include all of these different components. And I started reflecting about when I was on Wall Street, there were many people that were financially rich, but spiritually broke.
Right.
And then I started reflecting on my spiritual life and realized how many therapists and spiritual teachers I knew that were spiritually rich, but financially broke. And that's when I realized that the story of my own life was to bring these two things together, to find a way that I myself could have wealth and make a big impact and do it in a way where I was connected spiritually. My relationships were healthy and I could be healthy myself. And so that's what I realized is the combination of those two things was my understanding of abundance. And in my own quest to figure this out finally for myself, I created a course called the Abundance Archetype. And now that's exactly what I teach to my students. I teach them how to have abundance financially, how to be the best version of themselves in the financial world or the professional world, how to do what they love to do and to do it well. At the same time, take that same level of mastery and move it into the spiritual world so they can go deep into themselves and really try to find out what's in their heart and what do they want to do with their one life.
Awesome. And pretty much everything you said then was exactly why I wanted to get you on, because first I want to start with the void and how important that void is. So we have our careers and, that importance of who we are. And then we step out of that and then we're kind of not important anymore. We've lost our identity. We don't know who we are. And it's very deeply uncomfortable. For me, I found that. And because I could never go back to the old way, but the future was unclear. It was, and so you've left comfort and you're now in the uncomfortable. And I see so many people that are afraid to step into that space. But really for me, that's where the magic happened. I really got to know who I was. I really got to, that's where you probably remembered the drummer and the magician, and you start to figure out all these bits of you that you'd forgotten about or you had neglected or didn't even know were there. And so that void part is so important. And I wanted to know if you had anything else to say on the void.
The void is interesting. I think there are a lot of feelings that can come up. Like, did I do the right thing?
Yeah.
There's a sense of shock and a sense of grief at times. Like it's almost like a mini death.
Yeah, definitely.
Certainly like an ego death or a personality death. It could be less difficult if you have something that you want to go into, right? Like, for some people, I wouldn't necessarily recommend leaving one career and not having an outlet to go into. But for me, that was the case of what happened. But along that path, yeah, I think it's kind of difficult in terms of, making sure you carve out enough time to grieve properly and to process properly what you were giving up. But ultimately, I come to the conclusion that we don't leave anything behind. We transcend and we include. Yeah. And I realize that the skills I learned there are the same skills that make me successful now. And yeah, I think it's a process that we all go through, but ultimately, if we stay with it, that we come out stronger. It reminds me a little bit of the hero's journey in a lot of ways. You have to overcome obstacles, you find allies, you go kind of into the dark night of the soul, you go into the inner cave, and then you emerge and come back into society with the strength and wisdom that you've acquired along the way. So, I don't know if I have like fantastic advice for that. Some people might be safer to wait until you have another job or another career to go into, especially if your finances are not as comfortable. For For others, you might rip the Band-Aid off and go through a period of isolation where you really discover who you are and what you really want to do. You know, I think it's possible that we don't even need to leave our own jobs or our own way of living to do the things we want to do. I'll give you an example. I have a friend who was in the Wall Street world, and he was a trader type like me. And he was getting really burnt out with it after a long career at an investment bank. And when I had a conversation with him, I said to him, well, what did you love to do when you were a kid? Like, what was your number one thing that you really loved to do? And he said, I always loved soccer. I wanted to play soccer and football. And we realized that I said, well, what did you really love about that? What was it? And what ultimately it came down to was the team, kind of managing a team. He wanted to be a coach of a team. He liked getting to know people and pairing people up and motivating people and being a leader. And so what I realized at that time was actually what was possible for him was to move into more of a managerial role where he wasn't really doing the day-to-day trading, but he was then a manager of the traders. And he ultimately moved into that position and found an ability to be a soccer coach, so to speak, in his current job. And he was much happier working with people, getting to know people, learning how to make the best team and what are the right pairings, who should sit next to who should work on what project and so forth. So I don't know if we necessarily always have to leave the industry that we're even in.
Yeah.
In fact, I would encourage everybody before you just jump ship to see if you could find your own passion within what you're already doing. And then if you've explored it and it's not possible and you've kind of exhausted the options, then consider where to go next.
Yeah, really good point. And I wanted to touch on the fact that when you leave your old job or your old profession or your old identity, it's always with you. And that's one part of my progress that I used to work for the pub crawls and Surfers Paradise and drink and partying, and it was direct sales. So when I left that and I went down my spiritual path, I tried to leave all that behind. It left me broke. It left me miserable. It left me not creating and just kind of floating around in the world. And there was actually it got to the point with me that I personally couldn't even go back into the town. Like I created such a wall and I had to experience it and go back into the town, into my old life. And I'd also created the story that had made me sick. And then I had to physically go back into the town and realize, oh, wow, those parts of me are actually really, really important. I was really bloody good at what I did.
Yeah.
And if I'm to be successful in this area that I now am, learnt more about myself, I can't, shame parts of me or disregard parts of me. And I think a lot of people do that where they try to leave their old self.
Let's break this down for a second because, I don't know exactly what you're doing, but like, if we think about like the pub crawls and the different things, like even the partying, there's an essence of community there. There's an essence of organization.
Yeah.
There's an essence of networking, something about having fun and throwing good parties. And even on the pub crawl, you're taking people on a journey somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, if we drop the sort of the surface level of a pub crawl, but we look down underneath what were the skills and what was actually happening, you could actually take those same exact things and bring them into the spiritual world, taking people on a journey. How do we set up parties and organize the greatest parties that make us feel better? Spirituality should be a party.
Yeah.
It's how do we organize beautiful music and beautiful dance and beautiful food and beautiful people and celebrate life in a way that leaves us enlifted and ecstatic and joyful. And beautiful. How do we organize community and network with people? So, I think that you're right that the pushing away of those things is not the right idea. Maybe you want to push away the parts of it that you've transcended, but at the same time, include the skills that made you good at that and apply them to this new path.
Yeah.
How do you throw the most beautiful party that leaves people, so excited and invigorated for life? And how do you bring people together in a positive way that makes money, but also changes people's lives for the better? So, I think that we have this primary personality of what we identify in the moment. So I identified with the trader, but what was secondary was like the shaman, the artist, the musician, the spiritual person, the teacher. And then as soon as I move into the other thing as primary, where I'm now, meditating with monks and studying yoga and studying shamanism and drumming and all of a sudden I've made this trading part of me secondary. And to me, the goal is to create a third that only comes when we balance those two of those in our life. When we can balance the pub crawl organizer with the spiritual teacher. I could balance the trader with the teacher as well and bring those two together, because that's a huge part of ourselves. And we have to recognize that, no part of our path was a mistake, and that we are unique individuals, and our experience is part of our uniqueness, part of our own fingerprint. And to the extent that we really want to stand out in life, we have to bring all parts of our experience forward. Even bringing forward what you learned from the pub crawl to be able to help others is valuable. Many times in life, we realize that actually our struggles, me having been overweight, not only lets me empathize with people that are overweight and help them, but, inspires people and is probably one of the main reasons I'm even here on this podcast,
Yeah.
talking about my journey. And so, the same thing goes for you. The same thing goes for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, for me, I like you, how you kind of ran the two kind of parallel for a while, where you were more the trader, but you were also studying lots of things. Like I remember living in Las Vegas, working for the club crawls, studying every night for the Czech Institute. I had a moped that I would go to Whole Foods, grab my food. I was going to the gym every day, and so I was super fit, super healthy, selling pub crawls at night, studying for the Czech Institute. And I went to my first ayahuasca experience. There was a traveling shaman in the hills in the rich part of Vegas. I went and saw a Nuka chiropractor. The world's best Nuka chiropractor was in Las Vegas. And so for me, that was probably one of the most spiritual experiences I ever had, because there was so much distraction. Like you could do anything in Las Vegas, but here I was going to Whole Foods, going to the gym and studying, and felt so connected with my purpose. And if I would have just tried to do all that without working for the pub crawls, without being in Las Vegas, and I would have missed a really important lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you totally. I think that that's an important point, but, I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time, but I suspect that there's only a certain amount of time that we can do that, basically wearing these two masks before the weight of that weighs too heavily on us. I think Ken Wilber calls it the story gap.
Yep.
The gap between the story that we're telling ourselves about our life versus the story we tell others. So, I think that it could be a means to an end of a bigger goal, where I'm going to work on the pub crawl for 1 more year, 2 more years to save up enough money to get this degree or to start my own business. But if we live that life too long, I think it starts to wear and tear on, especially on our hearts and souls, because, we're moving against sort of the flow of our inspiration. If left up to your own inspiration, you're going to ayahuasca retreats and you're learning about, health and wellness, and you're doing various things, then, that's certainly where your bliss is. And to the degree that you're wearing a different mask and going to the pub crawls, I think, done too long will create disease and stress on our body.
It's no secret that doTerra has had a huge positive impact on my life, specifically around my mental health and my immune system. I've been doing this business now for 10 years, and I can ship these products to anyone, anywhere in the world within 7 days. So if you're needing a good night's sleep, reducing your stress, if you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, need some immune support, digestive support, metabolic health support, pretty much anything I can think of, these oils and doTerra product range can support you. Now, I created a landing page. It's thathealthdude.com/doTerra, or you can also reach out to me in their DMs and I can make a custom package specifically for your needs. There's two ways. Either become a customer, that's 90% of my business, or if you've got a wellness brand and a business, you can use doTerra and me, the perks are you get me as a fulfillment partner to really support and enhance the vitality of your customer base. Just go to thathealthdude.com/doTerra or send me a message in any of my social platforms in a DM.
I think we all kind of wear masks to some degree, like when we go out in public to the grocery store, we're probably not the same person we are at home. And, sometimes we go to jobs and we have to act in a certain way to fit in, or so to speak. But I think the more that we can move towards authenticity of being who we truly are at all times, the healthier we are. I think also the more financially rewarded we can be, and definitely the more spiritually connected we can become.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, what happened was the longer I left it, like playing that game, the more, I could feel my body getting heavier. I could feel the depression keeping in. And it got to a point where it was unbearable.
Yeah.
So I had to make that shift. And like you said, kind of ripping that Band-Aid off, sometimes we could leave that Band-Aid on too long and we're too scared to rip it off. And so there's some people that rip it off straight away, and there's some people that, the Band-Aid's been on there for 5 years too long, and it's really time to just get it off. And yeah, that's definitely something that I notice a lot of people do. They talk about their dreams. They want to go out after it. It's that one day they'll get there.
Yeah.
But they're not actually taking the steps to do that. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about, and a lot of the stories, it's about money, or when I've got the right finances, or when I've got the time, or when I've got this. And so relating back to what you do as helping people with abundance, which is money, which is time, which is creativity, all the things. What are some of the major blocks that you see and witness in people, and how do we support them to shift through? Of course, working with you is going to get them to that next level. But what's some of those little tips that we can kind of get them a bit of momentum going?
Yeah. So there's a few things there. One is I have produced a free document that the audience can download called the 8 Keys to Greater Wealth and Wellbeing. And you can just go to my website and you can download that. It's like a 25-page PDF.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Going through in my course, I have 8 steps to mastery that I developed. And so there's like a snapshot of all the 8 steps and a little bit of information about things you can do today that won't cost you any time, money, energy, or resources. In fact, they should support all of those. So there's 8 free tips for anybody who wants to learn more about that. One of the most limiting things is belief systems. And that's where I started my course. And how I work on that is a little bit more technical than we can get into in a, kind of a short conversation. But limiting belief systems, our beliefs are controlling our thoughts, and our thoughts are controlling our emotions and our feelings and our actions, right? So, a lot of people say, I think, therefore I am, right? It's a famous quote, but I really believe it's, I believe, therefore I am. So, what's driving our thoughts? Most of our thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday, and most of them are negative. And so we're living in this Groundhog Day of negativity. And a lot of these beliefs come back to our formative years of childhood, of things we witnessed in our life, like maybe a parent struggled with money. So we start to believe that love and life means always struggling with money. Maybe a teacher told us, oh, you'll never make money as an artist. So we start to believe love and life means you'll never make money as an artist. And you beautifully fulfill those prophecies for yourself based on your own belief system. And so anytime in your life you consciously want something different, you want to get over a certain money hurdle, you want to have a certain kind of relationship, you want to have a certain kind of body, let's say, for example, but it's not happening. You have to say, okay, hold on a second. What is my underlying belief system about this that's driving the bus? You know, our subconscious mind, if you imagine like the whole iceberg image, where there's like the tip of the iceberg outside of the water and the rest of the iceberg is below the water. Imagine the tip of the iceberg above the water is the conscious mind that's sort of having this conversation, where everything below is our belief systems, the wisdom of our body that's digesting our breakfast for you or lunch for me, or, you know, it's beating our heart, pumping our blood. It's breathing us while we're sitting here, not thinking of how many breaths per minute we need to take. The wisdom is unbelievable. Like the world's greatest supercomputer is inside of yourself. And so we've all had the experience of saying, I want to buy a blue Corvette or something, you know, I don't know, a red Audi, right? And like it's our dream car. And then all of a sudden we start driving down the road and we start noticing these red Audis or these blue Corvettes everywhere we go. They're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I just saw another one of these things. Well, are there more of them on the road? I don't think so. What's happening is you're priming your subconscious, telling it this is important for you. And so you have to work with your subconscious and you have to work with your beliefs. And I have a very comprehensive system of working with belief systems, identifying beliefs and working on beliefs. But a couple simple things that I can leave the audience with today is be open to asking empowered questions. For example, waking up with the day, let's just say you have a struggle with money. Instead of priming yourself by saying, I never have enough money, why is it that I'm always broke? Why can't I find the love of my life? Why can't I have the body that I want? Why am I so fat? Why am I so ugly? Why am I such a loser? All these things that, you know, a lot of people are saying to themselves a lot of the time. You know, I've been there. I'm sure you've experienced that too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so what's happening is when we do that, we're telling our subconscious that's like the blue Corvette. That's the Audi. Keep going, go look for the reasons why we're broke, why we're a loser, and continue to enforce that. So simply when we just start to say, why is it so easy for me to make money? Why is it so easy to find the partner of my dreams? Why is it so easy for me to have the body I've always dreamed of? And then be open, sit with it, and open up to new possibilities. Sit with these questions and see what your mind can produce. What is the ideal version of myself today? And open up to these new possibilities, priming your subconscious with positive questions. The other thing about it too is that if we're looking into the future for these things to happen, we're always going to be looking into the future for these things to happen. We're telling ourselves, we're priming ourselves, in the future, I want this to happen, or I'm going to make this move. And in the same way, we're telling our body that in the future, you're going to still be looking into the future. And so the antidote to that is to be grateful for what you have now, to be in a state of abundance now for something. I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful for my loved ones. I'm grateful for the money I do have. I'm grateful for the job I do have. I'm grateful for food. I'm grateful for good friends. I'm grateful for air. I'm grateful for water. I'm grateful for fire. I'm grateful for shelter. I'm grateful for Mother Earth, for God, whatever it is. But waking up and asking these positive questions and getting yourself into a mindset of gratitude, and that will be the attractor that helps you pull you towards and pull the future towards you in the way that you want to do it. It's not in 5 years, I'll be happy. It's being happy now, finding something to be happy about now, even if it's a small thing. Being grateful for a lover, being grateful for being alive. It's as simple as that. Forgiving yourself for any mistakes you've made, forgiving other people for any wrongdoings they may have done, moving into a state of gratitude for your life as it is in this moment, and then asking positive questions about what you can do in the future.
Awesome. Very wise words, my friend. The main thing I really would like to touch on now is there is a lot of stories, a lot of memes going around. The economy's not doing so well. You'll never be able to afford properties because properties are so expensive, and you've missed out on Bitcoin and all these things. There are so many stories that I have seen and witnessed that people can get trapped into, including myself sometimes. And what I've noticed is when you actually are true to who you are, there is enough resources for everyone. There's more than enough resources. There's more there is those right relationships. There's an abundance in every single area that you have. And you touched on it. There's these beliefs, and a lot of them can come from childhood and et cetera, et cetera. What about the beliefs that they're coming in through media and social media and friend circles? And what advice do you have to kind of weed them out and stay clear on, that blue Corvette or that red Audi?
Yeah. I want to touch on one thing first before I forget it. And, the best advice around investing that's safe to give is put your assets and your resources in something that you know. And that may be your own self. For example, the best investment might be to buy better quality food for yourself at this time. The best investment might be to invest in education at this time. It might be to invest in marketing for your brand or social media or something of the sort. It may also be a physical investment of some sort, but then go into an area that maybe you have some insight into. If you're looking at the stock market, maybe there's a particular stock or a particular sector that you know something about. If you're looking at cryptocurrency, do you know anything about it? If not, educate yourself on it and make a better decision. I could talk about all these kinds of things, but I think the most important thing to know is, I think we take investing for granted sometimes. We forget that the people that are on the other side of investments are highly trained and highly knowledgeable. They have the same level of expertise as a professional athlete or a surgeon. And so don't just throw your money away into an investment blindly, hope for the best. I mean, that can work, and it does work sometimes. But what I would encourage you to do is to invest in something that you know or invest in yourself. It's quite possible that a small investment in your own business might have a better return in something that you can control and manage than by giving money to like a mutual fund or a financial advisor that is more blindly taking your hard-earned money and putting it into something. So just something to kind of chew on there. With regards to media, I mean, come on. Well, I think anyone who's listening to this podcast knows that it's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, mainstream media is, as far as I'm concerned, is completely dead. I don't think 20 years from now, let alone maybe even 5, we're going to be watching the 6 o'clock news like we did like in the 1950s. I mean, I think we all realize that we're not getting our news information from the sources we used to. I mean, podcasts, for one, are transforming the space and probably won the US election, And so, social media, podcasts. So, I think it's important to realize that, you don't have to watch the garbage out there. And I think we all need to find, and so let's just say that we are consuming positive information or trusted information. Even with the trusted information, it often could lead towards a path of negativity, right? Like, we were talking before this podcast about kind of some of the things that were going on in 2020 and 2021 in the world. So let's just say you find like a really trusted source for information about the truth of the pandemic as far as you see it. So there's a point where you're informing yourself, but then there becomes a tipping point where you start to be so consumed with this information that it actually becomes a detriment to you. Because all you're doing is watching like InfoWars or Russell Brand or something about, everything that's wrong with the world. And the question is then like, well, what are you doing about it? And so we have to ask ourselves, like, is this piece of information improving the quality of our life? First, can we trust it? Then if we trust it, is it improving the quality of our life? And I think all of us have to move into our level of intuition to be called into a piece of media, to be called into a book, to be called into a link, and to not just fall prey to, the kind of the regular algorithms that are putting biased information in front of us all the time. And the same thing goes with our friends. Who do we feel? What makes us feel good? What turns us on? Who do we hang out with? What do we consume? What do we watch that makes us more alive, that improves the quality of our life? And focus more on that and less of the other. I also hold a deep place in my heart for old friends that have different values. I think it's easy to toss away old friends because they believe in the different political party or different vaccination status, or they like to drink and we don't, or whatever it is. But I think that there's a really important thing about holding on to people to the extent that you can keep it in balance, that you've known your whole life, that, there's a level of friendship there that's important. It takes almost a lifetime to develop a real friendship, but you can throw it away in a moment. And so really, I advise people to protect that, but also at the same time, recognize what are the boundaries that they need to protect themselves first, because self-love is the most important. So it takes a level of mindfulness and discernment and patience. And ultimately, a lot of the books and a lot of the things that we're reading, not so much in the media, but let's just take it to like the ayahuasca ceremonies you mentioned, or scriptures of some sort. These original documents that we are kind of like holding on a pedestal, and these original ideas, they weren't found in a book. They were found with a direct connection. And so we know it's possible. We know that human beings can have a direct connection to source. They can have a direct connection to their own soul. They can have a direct connection to their own heart that won't lead them astray, can give them novel, new information, not regurgitated by somebody else. And so the more time that one can spend kind of having these media breaks, having these silence breaks, even if it's small times throughout the day. And, I struggle with this myself. I have 4 kids. I have a lot of students and, a wife that needs my support and all kinds of things. So, sometimes I have to only find maybe 5, 10, 20 minutes to kind of step into these spaces. But even if it's 1 minute, it's okay. But to find a minute to breathe, put your hands over your heart, check in with your own guidance. How does this feel? What's pulling me? What's directing me? What's the best use of my time in terms of who I should be around, where I should spend my time, my energy, my money, my resources, and what makes me feel better when I pay attention to it. Ultimately, I've reached a tipping point where I don't really feel like I need to know so much more about what's going on in the world to be informed or to help the world. In fact, I think it's a lot more effective to just bring in a positive outlook. In the same way that we talked about belief systems, the more I think about what's wrong with the world, the more I manifest that. And the more I hold an image of positivity, of people coming together, of the soils improving, of the air improving, of economic inequality improving, of higher wages for people improving, of freedoms improving, and so forth. I think that I'm doing my part to bring that to fruition.
Definitely. And I really loved how you talked about the friendship thing, because this is something that I notice people do, is they go out, okay, I've got this new identity. I'm not a trader anymore. I'm now, a drummer, a shaman, a spiritual person, and they will cut off all people that they've worked with, they've laughed with, they've cried with, they've been around for such a long period of time. And it can be all fun over here until issues happen in this circle, because everybody's on that, same path, and you lose that perspective. And so I'll give you an example. I have a good friend who got married really young. And I thought, missing out on all these travel and all these things, and look at me, I'm so free. And now I'm at that stage where I look at his life, and he's doing really great things, and he's in this really grounded relationship, and he's extremely happy. And that's a part of my area where I want to go into now.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of look at him although we live different paths and have different beliefs about certain things, I have that reference of something that I now want, and I can look at that from a deep level of respect.
Yeah.
And I could have lost that opportunity if I would have said, oh, well, we live a different lifestyle, and I'm over here with this group of people, and you're too far behind, and you're too conservative, or, somebody's too progressive, and you miss out. And I do believe that so many people forget about who was there before you were spiritual or before you were a trader. Like, these are people I went to high school with, and we were just mates that would catch up and go surfing and be little punks.
Yeah.
And
those are the people you go surfing with. The thing is like, you're totally right. I mean, a true relationship, a true friendship is connecting on a heart level. And the heart level is not really involved in who did you vote for? Or, what's your view on a certain topic, right? And so, I don't think that every single person we went to high school or college with, we need to stay close with. Certainly I have not, but I have, a couple of key friends along the way, from very young to, high school and college years, that have stood the test of time. And even though we don't believe in necessarily all the same things, I still value those. And at the same time, I honor and value new friendships. I think a best, one of the, if you study Sufism, one of the 99 divine attributes, one of the 99 attributes of the divine that one can step into in their own life. And any one of these 99, if lived fully, will be an enlightenment.
Lighthouse is my signature 6 or 12-month one-on-one mentorship program. It's pretty much where I've gathered all my life experience as studying with the Czech Institute for 15 years, my intuitive gifts, my personal challenges, which I do not wish upon anybody, and to fast track you to where you want to go. And my approach is very simple. One, it's all about vitality and life force. Change takes a truck ton of energy. So you need that vitality and life force to ground you so that you're resilient when blockages come up, and they will. 2, we've got to get you clear, get that clarity on where you're going, because once you've got that little bit of life force back, you can start to dream bigger, that biggest vision for your life. And then 3, it's all about confidence. Now, as a lighthouse, you may have weathered many a storm. You may feel battered, you may feel broken, you may feel defeated. But as we rebuild your confidence, you start to shine bright, and it helps to guide others home, because they see that beacon of hope, that brightness of you sharing your truth, sharing the essence of who you are. And the truth is, the world really needs a lot of lighthouses right now, because people are stuck, people are overwhelmed, and we need your brilliance, that light within inside you, to be shining so bright that people can spot you from a bloody mile away. Now, all you got to do is head on over to thathealthdude.com/lighthouse, or send me a DM on any of my socials and we can chat and see if it works. I take on a few clients every year and let's see if we can make some magic happen.
To fully embody one attribute of the divine is like a perfected, limits of perfection life, let alone multiple of these attributes. But number 55 is one of my favorites, and it's friendship. And it's living as a real friend in understanding the art of friendship and the art of reciprocity and being a shoulder to cry on and vice versa, and being vulnerable to your friend and leaning on each other and being there for each other, and the joy and the laughter of friendship. Ultimately realizing that is the same kind of relationship you can have with God, that a friendship, a true friendship, is a path to the divine. And it's an understanding that you are having this friendship with the divine. You are, and you can. That God can be your best friend. The universe can be your best friend, and vice versa. And in fact, all of our relationships are like that. And yoga does a great job of talking about this. But for example, they talk about the relationship you have with your pet is a beautiful love relationship. And they have names for all of these. In English, we just have love. I love my car. I love my lamp. I love my kid. I love pizza. But, in other languages, they have lots and lots of different differentiations for psychological states of consciousness and altered states and many, 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 many kinds of love. One of them is the love of a pet. And by truly loving a pet, that is a kind of love that you can have with the divine. And that's why in the Vedic and yogic lineages, they often depict Krishna taking care of and loving cows. Because there's a beautiful relationship that you can have with a cow, and it's a metaphor for a kind of relationship you could have with the divine. The same thing with a child. You could be the child of the divine. And you could also treat the divine as if it were your child, with the care and love that you would of a child. The same thing with a lover. You could have a love affair with the divine. You could have a best friendship, a BFF with the divine. And so all of these different relationships that we're having here are all so important also to our own spiritual development. How we forgive a friend for a wrongdoing and still love them. How we support people. How we act in reciprocity and so forth. These are all, extremely spiritual acts.
Definitely. And yeah, you've seen a lot over the last few years where people have let things get in between them and the forgiveness. Yeah, I really actually enjoy the forgiveness and the surrender and the acknowledgement that belief systems can be different and you can still deeply, deeply love each other.
I agree. One other thing I want to say I don't want to skip over forgiveness because it's such an important thing. Honestly, forgiveness and gratitude and an optimistic outlook are probably the three most spiritual things you can do. Forgiving yourself so you can be present in this moment. Forgiving another, recognizing that even in their wrongdoings, they're still your teacher and you can learn from that, even if it's learning what not to do. And having gratitude for all of it and for your life as it is now. It's the only way to move forward into the life you want. You can't move forward into the life you've dreamed of unless you forgive yourself for the life you have today and forgive other people for anything that you think they may have done to you.
I really like that, what you just said.
Yeah.
And then you're giving yourself the life that, you have today, because we have to really acknowledge that we created where we are. And if it's not exactly where we want to be, that's okay. But we're the creator, so we can create where we want to be. If we've created this, we can create that. And I do see a lot of people where they can get stuck in victim mode of, oh, this happened to me. And as soon as you can shift back into creator mode, is I created this. Now I choose to create this. But I'm also grateful of where I am. It's a very fine balance.
Yeah.
If you can just get that nailed, that starts that spark for that next
Yeah.
phase.
One of the not easy. I don't think forgiveness is easy. I don't want to say that, but one of the best ways to start that I found is at the end of the day, looking over your own day, noticing the positive things and noticing the things you would like to change, and practice by forgiving yourself. And don't just forgive yourself and make the same mistake the next day, but forgive yourself for something you said that you shouldn't have said, and recognize it and do your best to integrate that and move forward into a new way of being the next day. And once you can forgive yourself, you can practice forgiving others. And once you forgive, you can move into a state of gratitude. You can even move into a state of gratitude for the people that have hurt you, knowing that it's very unlikely you would be the person you are today without that. And the person you are today is a beautiful person that has so much potential and so much life to live. And so, even the things that we think happened against us often can be reframed that they happened for us in one particular way or another. Even if it's to be somebody who can share the story of what happened to us so that other people don't have to experience that. Or we become the wounded healer and then we teach other people how to navigate that. Forgiveness, gratitude, optimistic viewpoint towards your own life and to life itself, and saying thank you. Those are really these are not things that kind of came easy to me, I would say. After studying for 15 years of many, 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 many teachers in different ways, I've met a mystic who's my 55 when it comes to the friendship relationship, who goes by the name of Yehuma. He's a sort of a mysterious person. And in this process, I've really simplified, 17, 15, 20 years of very philosophical, very esoteric studies into some very simple fundamentals. Being grateful, forgiveness, saying thank you, protecting the earth, picking up trash, cleaning up your life, being respectful, honoring other people, not being jealous, but being inspired by other people. Like in your situation, not being jealous of that friend, but by being inspired by them. Have that in your own life and so forth. So, I don't think we have to make spirituality into such a complex algorithm. It starts with just being grateful in the morning when you put your feet on the ground and saying, man, I'm so excited today to be me. I'm so grateful to wake up and to see this sunrise and to breathe air and to eat my breakfast and to have a job. Even if it's not the perfect job, I'm just grateful to have a job and to have the company of good friends and maybe a pet or whatever it is. And find something small to be grateful for and let that be your momentum. In trading, often the trend is your friend was kind of a saying, right? Like the predominant trend is usually the one that continues. So Bitcoin is going up. It's more likely it continues to go up and go down, we could say. And so let the trend be your friend of your day. You wake up in the morning, you turn on your phone and you see there's another war or another bombing or a bill to pay or your boss yelling at you or whatever. That is now your new momentum into negativity. And you begin exponentially building on that until somebody cuts you off in traffic on the way to work and you're screaming out the window and you're getting into a fist fight in the highway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when we start with a positive, when we can delay the phone and delay the problems and sit there and search for the positive things, as small as they may be at first, search for the positive things and let that be our momentum and let that grow. Smile at somebody we wouldn't normally smile to. Go over our edge a little bit. Take a different path to work, explore a new opportunity. Send a handwritten note to somebody instead of an email. Say something that we wouldn't normally say. Stand up for somebody. Express feelings. Call up your parents and go over your edge and tell them how much you love them. call up an old friend and say, I really miss you, right? I mean, these kinds of things, bringing in this positivity, taking action to bring in positivity in small ways each day is the medicine to attract more of that back to you in return in greater amounts. The more you do that, the more you'll receive it. And so, I think that kind of wraps up that portion. But, my hope is to let people recognize that all of these things are within their own grasp. And to do 1% more today than they did yesterday, and to move in that direction by practicing some of the things that I spoke about.
Yeah. And the thing is that if you look at it, like you said, the one day or the future or eventually we'll get there, compared to if you do that 1%, that 1% rapidly creates momentum, because although you might just be grateful for you get up and the sun's out or the birds fly over. Okay, that seems like something so minuscule and minute, but then more opportunities to be grateful will show themselves. And then that expands and expands and expands and expands. And it does happen quite quickly. And this is where you see people, you hear things like quantum jumps and all these type of words. This is when you see somebody that looks like they're an overnight success. Whereas what's happened is they've been just having these moments of gratitude or these 1% moments. And it might have been over a year or 6 months or 5 years, but then boom, they're exactly where they want to be. And it can happen very, very quickly to those that are on the outside. But it all started with that little tiny glimpse of gratitude, or that tiny glimpse of just looking at the world in a different way, believing in themselves a little bit more, loving themselves a little bit more.
Just think about it like this for a second. If a friend does something nice for you, says you look nice today, or goes out of their way to buy you a coffee or to check up on you, you naturally want to go back and do that for them, don't you? You naturally like, wow, I so appreciate that. What can I do for you? It comes naturally to us. We want to reciprocate, but we often think that the universe is different than us. So the universe acts in the same way. When you honor the universe, when you respect the universe, when you love the universe says thank you and honors, respects, and loves you back. It works on a one-to-one relationship, just like our friendships do. If you don't show up for your lover, they're not going to show up for you. If you don't show up to work, your boss is going to fire you. If you don't show up for a friend, you're not going to be friends. In the same way, we show up for the universe matches us. The more we're willing to lean into it, the more it leans back into us. It's like a mirror in that way. But it works on the same basis of things that are very practical to us that we recognize in everyday life. Another thing to point out in terms of practical understanding of this is, like, think about if you work for a big company and all of a sudden, there's like the CEO and there's like 10,000 employees or whatever. And you're like, somewhere down the chain of this organizational chart. If you had an opportunity to meet the CEO, he or she, whomever they are, it's not a great strategy. And most people probably wouldn't do this if they were smart, to go into their office and say, what can you do for me? Right? I want this. I want that. If you meet a person of that caliber, it's a very smart thing to say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? I appreciate your mission. I love what you're doing. I'm so inspired by your work. I would even work for free just to be around you more, to learn these skills, to be of service to you. Right? And so we know that that's kind of like a smart play in human land, right?
Yep.
But we forget that the divine works under the same principles. So when we show up and say, what can you do for me? It's the same way as if you walked into your boss's office, like I said, they would kick you right out.
Yeah.
But when you show up in a way of, What can I do for you? Oh, let me pick up this piece of trash. Oh, let me work on this part of the environment. Let me just give you praise and gratitude for everything you've done. Then they become more responsive. You approach the universe in the same mood you would approach the boss, or the same mood you would approach a pretty man or woman at a bar or a restaurant or a yoga studio that you want to get to know. It's not, let's go home and get in the sack. It's like, I want to get to know you better. I'm interested in you. I'm curious about you. There's a vibe, and that same vibe has to happen from an abundance perspective, that we start to relate to the universe around us like it's alive, like we're a part of it and we're in relationship to it. And the more we respect it and honor it, the more it matches us. It says yes. And in that way, we really, even from a scientific perspective that Dr. Karim of biogeometry proves, we begin to emanate those qualities. Nature herself is abundant. Without us here, nature would be prolific, right? It'd be every diversity of animal, plant, and tons of food and all this kind of stuff. We kind of have a distribution and allocation problem. We don't really have an abundance problem, so to speak, with the planet. But when we align ourselves with rituals that are life affirmative, when we align ourselves with nature, we take on her principles that are naturally abundant and become little generators of abundance ourselves. And there's a lot of etymology I could go into that, I think would be kind of boring, but many different words like rich, for example, are connected to rhythm and ritual, and ultimately in Sanskrit, the ritam, which are the laws of nature. And so all of these different things is getting in tune with the rhythms of your day, the rhythms of your body, the rhythms of the season, setting up rituals of being grateful and forgiveness rituals and respect rituals and honoring rituals, honoring yourself, your relationships, the universe, and moving into a state of gratitude. And then you start to harmonize with these principles and begin to attract more of that into your life.
Beautiful. And pretty much everything you've said today is exactly why I wanted to get you on, because you're bringing abundance back into not something that's out there, but in here, and something that purely just by reconnecting to our love for ourselves, our love for nature, the physical, the things that people want, whether that be the relationship or the finances, the car, whatever, they just naturally unfold purely because you're now resonating at that level, because you've accepted that nature is abundant, you are abundant, rather than thinking it's out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why I really wanted to get you on, because of, that finance world. A lot of people can be put off by it because they do think that they have to maybe disconnect from themselves, or they need to chase something, or there's the grind. And, of course, there's hard work. Things that are worthwhile are, you got to have a bit of dedication and a bit of resilience and a bit of adaptability and all those things. But at the same time, you are abundant and everything around you is abundant, as long as you just start to acknowledge it and see it and witness it on a day-by-day basis.
This is kind of like a funny joke, but, I look a lot about the etymology of words, and one of the root words of abundance is unda. And I always kind of do this like corny Australian joke. It's like, it's down under, but it's like, it's literally under us.
Yeah.
Abundance is inside of us.
Yeah.
The problem is that we've decided to look for it outside of ourselves. We, the subject, make the objects of our life the deciding factor of abundance, but all of those objects, unfortunately, fade. Our looks fade, our cars get old, things decay, our houses that are brand new eventually will be old houses that nobody will want someday, and so forth. But there is a source of eternal satisfaction, and that is when we reverse and we become the object of our search. We look inside of ourselves. We look underneath. And that's where we can find true abundance from the inside out.
Boom. Exactly. Exactly. I think that is the perfect way to end this podcast.
Great.
I'm very, very appreciative of you coming on. And so all the links will be in the show notes. Do you want to just say your website?
Yeah, I'll just say a very quick little thing about it. If you go to jasonpickard.org, you can access my 8 keys to greater wealth and well-being there. And you also have the opportunity to book a free discovery call with me if you're interested in pursuing, learning more about the abundance archetype. The abundance archetype is really an incredible opportunity that I've taken hundreds of people through at this time. And, what I found that's most interesting about it is that not only is the course, I think profound because it's the kind of the culmination of 20 years of Wall Street with 20 years of spiritual growth and putting them together. But what I found to be the most exciting is actually the community that I've developed. So I have this really amazing community, and we meet 2 times a week on Zoom. I bring in amazing guest speakers from all walks of life and all different fields to speak to the students. And they often say like they love it. It's like being a part of a live podcast. And I do, the majority of the calls as well myself, and do exercises and answer questions and do live coaching with people. We just came back from an amazing retreat in Mount Shasta, California, which was just incredible to get together. So, for me, really the asset of the future is community, and it's being surrounded by like-minded people that have similar values, people that we can share this experience with, that are trying to find ways to create wealth and do it in a positive way so that they can support their families, themselves, and the world. And so that's kind of what I'm most excited about is my community. I used to think that I created a course and the secondary part was the community. And I've realized by doing this now for 2 years that I created a community of people, and the course is there to guide them along the path. And so if you're interested in learning more, just hit me up, go to my website, and we can talk more.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, my friend, and keep being awesome. Keep spreading your message, and look forward to watching you grow and witness you on your journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you.